Okay, I think we can get started. We have a fairly substantial agenda here, it looks like all of a sudden, so that's great. On infrastructure, I'm thinking this is probably,
That's
a
me.
lot of these are Gabriel's topics, so go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't sure whether it's an infrastructure issue or it's just an SD core overall issue. But the thing is that we consolidated the GitHub Actions into a single repository. And because of the work that the Canonical team is doing on migrating the gRPC communication to REST-based communication, the AUSF and NRF, basically, we created new releases for those, new major releases for those. And it is supposed to automatically create branches when there is a minor or major release. But for some reason, I'm getting an error that I don't quite understand why the error is there. I went through the GitHub action itself, how is it called, to make sure whether the secrets are passed and everything is properly set up. It seems that everything is correct, so I was wondering whether, in this case, Eric can help us taking a closer look into that because I don't see. Personally, it looks to me that there is no error, but of course the branch doesn't get created and there is some kind of error there. So I opened a ticket yesterday. In the ticket, I added the reference to the two actions that basically fail in the AUSF and NRF repositories, and hopefully there is some input in there.
Yeah, I haven't seen this yet, so I will pick it up and take a look.
Cool, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nothing. I mean, everything seems correct, but again, it's not working. So, and I know that the issue is not the token because beside the token is being used to create a GitHub this a branch, and it's also being able to used to create a tag. So the tag work fine, but the branch creation failed. So, yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Anything else in infrastructure? Let's move on to the core.
Yeah, so there are kind of three main things that are happening on the core. The first one is something that Gislan is mentioned a few weeks ago about the migration from gRPC to REST. This is basically to have the communication between the web console and the different NFs, or in other words, is how the NFs get the configuration from the web console. This effort is underway, led by the Canonical team. So at the moment, the web console already has the server running. So for now, it has two servers that are running. One is the old gRPC server, and the other one is the REST-based server that is running. So besides that, they also kind of migrated for now the AUSF and NRF. So these two components are already using the REST API for the REST communication, and the gRPC base got removed. The other network functions need to do the same thing, right? So they get the gRPC removed and have the REST API in place instead of that one, and then we can remove from the web console the gRPC base server and all the kind of files related to that part. So that's an effort that's going underway. Then one more thing that we have there is because of all these different changes, the idea was to have this end-to-end GitHub action to basically validate when there is a PR, it actually runs, not just from the unit test perspective or in isolation, but also making sure that there is no issues from an end-to-end perspective, and meaning that having let's say a GNOD VC simulation and successful, that everything passes, to make sure that nothing breaks in between. They currently Gulsam from Canonical open a PR for every single NF that we have, but at the moment we are kind of addressing one issue. Is about patching the image that is being used for the PR to replace it and basically use that for the end-to-end test. So that's something that we had a kind of call yesterday. I think we got figured out. So, and then she needs to kind of run some tests on that to make sure that everything works as expected. Now, this is something that I asked Eric and also Larry last week, but I wanted to bring it up as well to the entire TST, is that this action takes about like 10 minutes to complete. The good thing is again, it tests end to end. The basically nothing from the PR perspective breaks the end to end part. Sometimes the PR may work in isolation in the unit test or locally, or the code can build and things like that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that from an end to end perspective it's gonna work. Um, the the negative side on this is basically that these GitHub actions, basically they run for every single commit. So if a PR has a single commit, it's gonna run once. If a PR has like 50 commits, it's gonna run 50 times. So it's gonna consume a lot of kind of time. That's something that I wanted to get some insight whether um, we,
Why?
we
That sounds like a bug. Why wouldn't it run just for once for the entire PR?
so basically that's kind of the GitHub Actions run. So let's say since the PR is open, if there is an additional commit to that PR, the GitHub action is gonna run. If the PR got open at the beginning with multiple commits on it, it's just gonna run once.
Okay,
But
okay.
as soon as the
Got it.
PR is open, every additional commit that goes on top of that is gonna run the GitHub actions. So it's not really a bug.
Got it. Well, that doesn't sound horrific to the extent that by the time you do the PR, you probably ought to be 95% of the way there, right?
Yeah. Well, there are, I believe most of the cases are going to be covered and everything should be fine. I mean, in the case of the end-to-end testing. However, there is going to be scenarios where the tests are going to fail, but not because there is an issue with the PR itself, but it may be because some parameter change on the Helm charts, for example, right? So, and that basically comes to this the migration to from gRPC to REST. For example, in this case, the endpoint in the gRPC base is just web UI colon 9876, which basically the port number. But when we migrate to the REST, basically the endpoint changes to HTTP or HTTPS, colon slash slash web UI colon, and the port is 5001. So in that specific case, the communication is going to fail. But there is nothing wrong with the PR itself, but it's basically we need an update to the Helm charts as well. This is kind of one of
Well,
those cases.
that's exactly the scenario you're trying to catch with these end-to-end tests. So that's good.
No, I mean, not really. I mean, the issues that we're trying to catch with this end to end is basically when somebody makes a change on let's assume the AMF, right? To make sure that that change is still from an end to end perspective is still kind of working. That's the idea. But in this case, when we make some upgrades, right? So improvements. So I know that we need to make these changes, but as part of the PR, those changes cannot be there because we need changes on the Helm charts and we don't on top of the changes that are happening on the PR itself. So on those scenarios, basically we may need to ignore this end-to-end validation and actually go for a manual testing to make sure
All
that
right. So you're saying there are cases, upgrade cases that you cannot test because there's a conflict between what you do end to end, which has not yet been updated, and a particular PR that touches some NF. I mean, there needs to be a clear understanding of that scenario, I would think.
well, no. I mean, the scenario is basically is that there is an improvement on the, let's say, AMF. right? So somebody opened the PR. But because of this improvement, some changes need to be made in the Helm charts,
Right.
right? But the PR is for the AMF, so there is no changes on the Helm charts. Therefore, the test is gonna fail.
Yeah, but
This enters
my point is you can't you're simultaneously claiming there's value in end-to-end test, but you can't do the end-to-end test because it touches stuff that is outside of the PR. So
in this scenario, yes. In those scenarios, yes, correct.
so I don't, how do you deal with that? I mean, without triggering I mean, I guess if you could back out and not trigger the automated and force a manual test.
Well, I have to do some manual tests, and let's say in local deployment, or somebody has to manually test, validate that. But Sean has some comment, I believe.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say that, you know, if like you should be pointing at specific versions of specific things in your Helm charts and not trying to work off latest. You know, I think if external dependencies are going to change your tests, then that kind of says to me that you're using latest branch or version of something, and that kind of is the thing that's making your tests brittle.
No. Okay. So yeah, no, it is not. No, it's not the case. So you know, for the case, we are trying to use on-ramp for this end-to-end test, and in on-ramp we are specifically linked to a specific. Pointing to a specific version of the Helm charts, right? My point is that the Helm charts in the versions they have to sorry, the Helm charts in the values YAML file, you basically configure certain parameters, right? So for the case of the replacement of the gRPC for REST, gRPC is running on port 9876. The REST is running on 5001. So we are kind of trying to implement, let's say, the AMF to start running the REST endpoint. So internally, the AMF is expecting to communicate, the server on the web console is listening on port 5001 for the REST API. So we need, through Helm charts, we need to update that configuration port for the AMF to use that port.
Yeah, I
But
kind
it's
of
not
get
about
that, but I mean, what I think is that your end-to-end test should be for a specific version of the values file and a specific version of the Helm chart, and
correct.
the Helm chart should have specific versions of components in it. So like you shouldn't be getting any surprises when you're running a test like that.
Yeah, but no, probably I'm not explaining myself.
I think we get it, but there clearly is a subset of changes of patches that touch a network function, and you can test that PR in isolation because it doesn't impact into the external environment. Then there are times that you will want to run tests that do touch or expect specific changes in the external environment. And if it's an end-to-end test, I think this is what Sean is saying too, you need to submit in the PR that entire environment, which is the change to the NF plus the change to the environment as part of the PR.
Okay.
And that's, I understand that's an extremely cumbersome thing to do. And maybe that's what that just said is you kind of forced yourself through a manual process, in which case I would go back and exclude that case from the automated process and disallow it, or I'm not sure how to deal with that.
Okay. No, I mean that we can basically just change from required to optional, and then we can just force. But I just wanted to kind of bring that up. So they're gonna be most of the time is gonna work fine, but there are some cases where there are some upgrades that things need to change from the Helm charts perspective, and that's of course is expected to fail, even though there is nothing wrong with the PR itself.
That's right. That's right. And as long as everyone understands that that scenario exists and the proper action is to chat with you and do a manual test or whatever the proper action is. Sean, does that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I had missed the point of the external environment. So thanks for clarifying that, Larry. But I think, you know, the fact that you are depending on an external environment is really making your test brittle. It's not completely idempotent, or it's not completely isolated. And so, yeah, I'd agree with you that, like, maybe you have to have a second external environment to represent the new case where you changed your ports around, and point to that in your tests when
And
you're
that
ready.
may not be automated.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, that's gonna from the end-to-end testing that you know, it's gonna help most of the time, but sometimes we're gonna see these issues, and you know, it takes some time to complete, and it runs after the PR is open, it runs for every single commit. So that's gonna kind of consume time on GitHub runners. Then moving on to the next topic is we were, as part of the 3GPP release upgrades, and also kind of like aligned to some issue that we are facing on one of our deployments. We are in the process of, we are trying to kind of upgrade MongoDB and Kafka to their latest versions. So there is a PR open at the moment for the SD Core Helm charts. However, there is a couple kind of there's one issue that I'm seeing that from the producer side. Basically, the latest version of Kafka, they dropped the Zookeeper, so we were kind of relying on Zookeeper before, or currently we are relying on Zookeeper. So with these latest versions of Kafka, I addressed some issues or some incompatibilities, let's say, from the producer side. So it seems like the producer, in this case, AMF and SMF, are sending their topics or publishing their topics into the broker. But it seems like the consumer side, or in this case, the metric funk, is kind of like giving some errors, and that's what I haven't been able to address so far. And you know, if anyone has any thoughts, suggestions, I can, you know, provide further details of what the error is and see if there is any input I can get to move forward with this PR. Yeah, I think those are the three main topics, at least from the SD core perspective. There are some other, you know, issues being resolved with the PR that are being kind of like opened by the canonical team. There is, we are kind of fairly up to date with these PRs, and there's a couple more that got open, I think yesterday or well this morning, and I need to review. Besides that, I think we are good.
Okay. Let's scramble up the agenda just a little bit, and we'll come back to on-ramp. I would propose jumping ahead to the ARA items. Looks like there's an update there, so that's good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we do put the SD-RAM blueprint of Arrow under our Arrow Barley's Building Lab page. So if you have time, or anyone have time, they can double check and leave your suggestions. And for the SD core blueprint, I will ask Joshua to move the his blueprint from our Arrow wiki to the Ether wiki page.
So where would I find the RAN blueprint?
Yeah, so if you click the Arrow Barley's Living Lab tab on the left, yeah, I create a subpage of that.
Okay. And on the core.
Yeah, so we will move it to the same place with the Arrow SD-RAM blueprint later.
I'm confused as to where that is. Maybe I'm not looking at the right place here. Where we want to document the blueprints is in the docs, in the Ether guide. So not the wiki. I mean, wiki is a temporary place. It's fine, but is it all under here?
Yeah,
Here it is. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
Now I see it. All right, so that's the RAN blueprint.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I'll take a look at that then.
Mhm.
All right, where are we? Right. Oh, shoot. I was adding some stuff under the wrong. Am I in the right spot? 828. I have a feeling I was adding some items to this is weird. Why am I not finding what was there a minute ago? Yeah, here it is. I have no idea what that was about. I guess this is the window I'm editing. All right, sorry about that. So anything else from ARA?
Yeah, I just have a question. I think you add the doc error at etherproject.org. Yeah, I'm just wondering how we can move our blueprint to there later.
Well, so if you go look at that document,
Mm-hmm.
then well, let me just I will jump to it here and hopefully be able to find my way back. Well, that's not working. There is a whole section in here of blueprints.
Yeah.
So there would just be a new section in there. And it has a
Mm-hmm.
particular assumption about how things are done, which we'll need to sync up on perhaps. And it may involve some manual steps because you do have a radio involved here.
Yeah.
So take a look at this section in particular, and the top of it tells you what a blueprint looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll figure out how to edit this document jointly.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
Okay. All right, I'm ready to move back to on-ramp. First couple of bullets, I think, are from Gabriel again.
Yeah, so as part of a project that we're working on, so we are kind of like improving the SRS run blueprint such that we can deploy multiple GNODBs at the same time. So something similar, kind of like what is done in the UARN SIM or the GNODB SIM blueprints, but in this case for the SRS run GNODBs. Such that we can deploy multiple GNODBs at the same time.
Good.
Yeah, so that's just enhancing that capability there. Then we also we created in the past one image for the SRS run GNODB. So we had validated that image with a CMQ, which is for simulation, and a UHD driver, which is for USRTs and over there testing. A few weeks ago, we had the option to kind of also validate the image for the DPDK base. So there were a couple of dependencies missing that we added those dependencies. So now the new SRS run GNOB image supports simulation over there for UHD. For the case of USRPs, we have tested with X310 and with B210. And for the DPDK, we have tested with the Benetel RU. So that's basically a kind of like fairly complete image to multiple different testings. Sorry, multiple different setups or deployment types. And then the other part is we created this OSC rig blueprint. When we were doing some testing a few weeks ago, there were a couple things that failed. So we need to kind of make some, we already made some updates, but we need to open the PR with improvements to make sure that everything works as expected. So expect to see one PR soon for the OSC rig and also another PR for the SRS run blueprints.
All right, great. I'll watch for those.
Okay.
So I added the last two bullets here. One is as partly a response to the OSC RIC, but I think it generalizes in other cases. As we gather more blueprints, I'm tweaking the definition of a blueprint. It was always one-to-one with a VAR file. And there are situations where you might reuse an existing VAR file, but have a new set of make targets. And I'm still trying to work that out. And I think I want to take the input from the ARA blueprints into account. So I've been holding off a little bit on that account. That's just an FYI. It really doesn't change anything except how we describe blueprints to people and how they so they can take advantage of them. The second point, which is the last sub bullet there, is as many of you know, the Indian open source team has been working pretty significantly with SD Core, and they, in collaboration with the Nefio project at Linux Foundation, now have a means of, or it's in development still, but I've seen an early description of it, a means of deploying Aether using Nefio. What we need to figure out, Nefio in some respects is an alternative to OnRamp, or you could think of it as an alternative to Canonical's Juju-based deployment. So those are different ways of deploying on the Aether core, coupled with some radios. They're working with the OAI radio, I believe. In any case, just an FYI that they have something in development, and this will give us an alternative way of deploying the core. But we have to figure out how to make it available to people and document it. So I'm not sure how that'll turn out. Questions or other on-ramp topics? I want to go back for just a second. Michelle, this is something that I want to get on your radar. Back here and the testing, the GitHub actions, this is a significant amount of compute that will happen on GitHub. After some point, GitHub starts to charge you for that. They have not yet, Gabriel and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, they are not yet charging us anything. And it may be the case that we have an org in GitHub that's been grandfathered in for free usage. I'm not sure. Do you know anything about the OMEC project under GitHub, and if we're at risk of starting to run up bills or anything like that? I don't think they have a credit card on file for us. So that would slow them down in charging us, I think.
I'm not aware. Eric, do you know anything? I'll pull up the org real quick and see.
Yeah, we looked and didn't find anything, but it is actually, Gabriel, I believe it's the case that you've already been consuming non-trivial resources and no one has complained.
Well, resources have been trivial, right? Typical runners. The only thing we have been using like a lot of time. So,
What time?
So-
Yeah, I mean, charging for the time though.
right. So there is like regular runners, but time we have been going far, far above what is web page says. You know, the GitHub allotted amount of time for open source organizations.
So I hope I'm not creating a problem when there isn't one, but I'm a little concerned that this could start consuming resources, and that is a budget impacting thing, which is, Michelle, why I wanted to just make you aware of it. And so either we continue to fly under the radar, or they start charging us and we have to figure out how to budget for it.
It says GitHub free for organizations get 2,000 GitHub action minutes per month. Are we
Correct.
thinking we're going to
That's
exceed
what
that?
the website says. Last month, I think we were like in 8,000.
at 8,000?
Yeah, based on Eric, you had the data, the specific amount, so 8,000 something.
We may have lost Eric.
Mm.
Yeah, so Michelle, that's exactly the issue. We've already blown through that. We've seen no ramifications from it. We don't think there's a credit card on file. So it's not just a matter of delayed billing. But FYI,
Well, that's a little bit, I
it
don't,
is a little concerning,
I
which is
don't want to leave it as just a like, keep, if it was like a little bit over, if we were, hitting like 2,500 or 3,000 minutes per month exceeding that threshold, it would be like, okay, wait and see. If we're exploding past that, I just really don't want the project to end up with a big outstanding bill that we owe because we already used those minutes and can't like return it, right? Especially when the board is so cognizant about the limited funding we have left. So I realize it looks like I'm not an owner on the org, I'm just a member. So I don't know if Larry or Gabriel, if you have ownership permissions for the OMEC project org, if you can make me an owner and I can try to dig into this a little bit more. I also understand we don't necessarily want to poke the bear and cause charges that we're kind of currently getting away without, but I'm just concerned I don't want us to end up with a big old bill.
yeah. All right. So we don't have to resolve this right now. I just wanted to loop you in, and we should take this as an item to figure out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Gabriel, I mean, the point is, this is a budget impacting thing which most everything else we've been doing has not been. So we do need to tread a little bit lightly here.
So is there any indication of what the cost would be per minute if you go over?
I'm not seeing anything right off the bat. It's more that they would want you to upgrade to like an enterprise account if you're using that anything more than 3,000 minutes a month. And that's $21 per user per month. So it's not an insignificant fee. Again, I need to look more into it and kind of, we have how many members do we have? Yeah, and I can't see everything because I'm not an owner on or
Yeah,
an
and
admin yet.
membership is probably not representative of what it really ought to be. This has got a lot of old.
Michelle,
Currently showing 209 members.
Yeah, that is we would immediately start pruning that back if it were having budget impact, because that's not representative where we are now.
Yeah, because that would end up being that would be over $4,000 a month. So that's not insignificant.
Right.
quick question, Michelle. I see two accounts for it seems like there are two, one that says Michelle ONF and the other one says Michelle A. Roth.
The second one,
okay.
The first one was linked to all my old ONF stuff. So the second one is the one I set up since the LF.
Membership.
Yeah, thanks, Gabriel. I'll look into this and see, like, I would hope they would send like an email or something saying we're gonna start charging you, but you never know.
Well, wait a minute here. I'm looking at OMEC project billing page. They've got a current metered usage of $20. I don't know if this is real for July, and then we're just early in July.
Well, if it's already at $20 and I mean, that's showing.
And that does seem to have some relationship to what's actually going on, because web console is definitely in there.
I guess the question is there like an alternative to not doing all these GitHub actions?
Well, I mean, we've been doing this in Jenkins, but what we wanted to do, what Gabriel is pursuing here and with Canonical, is trying to run some tests automatically at check-in time as opposed to daily, which is what we're doing now.
Okay.
So the very bottom of your screen there, Larry, seems to indicate kind of what the cost is. It kind of implies that 2,000 minutes is worth $16.
It looks like we have a discount for some. Can you click on the view details? Let's see what that says.
You are on there, Michelle, now, just in
Oh,
case.
thank you. But it's not billing, which is interesting.
Yeah, that's, yeah, so payment information. I don't think I mean,
I'll talk to Eric and maybe some of the other release engineering folks, because maybe this is built into like
something, yeah,
somehow
yeah.
got added into like LF's like enterprise account, and it's not.
The bear we just may have poked was LF here, in the sense that you may be getting the bill already and just didn't know it was us.
Not the first time that's happened. Okay, I'll poke around and see what I can find out.
Okay, so I think that's probably enough on that for now. Is there anything else agenda-wise? All right, thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.